BIDI. Part 2. Peru, March 6, 2020. Well, BIDI is with you and he says hello. Brothers and sisters, good evening BIDI. Well, first of all we will listen to your questions and try to answer them. Brother, we do not have many questions, but we do have a question from a person, a brother or sister, I do not know, who was not present. So, question to BIDI. We now know that the time of the Masters is over. We now know that the Ascended Masters were a shadow that did not contribute in any way to the recovery of the freedom that we all are. We now know that even the Melchizedek were an illusion, archetypes that were also part of the theater of creation, like Mary and Christ, and that they too could not really contribute to the effective recovery of the freedom that we all are, ultimately, eternally, absolutely. So how now, or in what way, have the anarchy, the archons, having locked us up much more, denying our original freedom, been able, by spitting on humanity in every way, to make or contribute effectively in any way to the recovery of the freedom that we are all from all eternity? If the first, not having been able to make a real contribution, how could the last have done so? But there's no question of the archons playing on freedom. They belong as much as Mary, as the Ascended Masters, as the Melchizedek to illusion, to dreams. Quite simply, their action on suffering, on a pathological confinement, with an inability to reason and to relate to the truth, means that suffering, at a certain stage within the person in the dream, like a nightmare, leads to awakening. So it is not a question of saying that it was the archons or whoever it was that brought about the awakening, but the very circumstances of creation and the myth of creation that has led today, beyond any role, whether of Mary, Christ, Buddha, the archons or Yaldabaoth, to awakening. There is no higher truth in the anarchy, there is no truth other than that what you are beyond form, beyond dimensions, and beyond all people. They have no privilege, Joel, except for the suffering induced by the very fact of creation, by what you have called the fall, in the West, which is simply a darkening of the truth, by an ever deeper penetration of consciousness within matter. And this in every possible way. You are here in a country where consciousness has been manifested in the stones, that it is this most extreme level of densification of consciousness, linked to symbolism, linked to dreaming, linked to heaven and linked to earth, that neither of which exist. Truth is a country without a path, as Brother K used to say, you are the truth, there has never been anyone. All the rest are only suppositions, cogitations that concern the person, and the person is not concerned with freedom. As this question is presented, it implies that there are still stories, whereas for 3 years I have been telling you not to nourish any more stories about spirituality, conscience or anything else. There are no more Ascended Masters than there are Melchizedeks, stars, ancients, planetary regions, or devils. All belong to the projection of consciousness within the dream. If today you want to be free in totality, to awaken, all you have to do is to embrace, to accept, to cross over, to reject any notion that chains you to anything or anyone. Otherwise there will be suffering. Creation, whatever the worlds are, like consciousness, is suffering. Accept it, verify it, and you will experience it. But do not hand over any stories, or ancients, or stars, or anarchy, or anything, for all of that belongs to the dream, or the nightmare. It is the conjunction of the falsified archetypes, and even the incarnation, so to speak, of Christ, in the West, that made you tell stories to take you to the point where there is no more history. All of this, as Abba said, was written long before creation. What must happen will happen, what must not happen will not happen, no matter what you do. Agree to do nothing, and you will be beyond doing anything and being anything. Just be present in what life proposes to you, with humility and simplicity, but please do not tell yourself any more stories, whatever they may be. You are prior to history, your person is a story, your soul has a story, but what you are has no story. Accept it and verify it. Another question. Brother, will the coronavirus cause any problems for our brothers and sisters present to return to their respective countries? Is this a question about your traveling? Brother, yes. It does not matter. Laughter. What does it matter? You are where you are, you will be where you have to be, there is no point in thinking about it, but embrace everything that happens without exception in relation to this virus. Even if you have to die from it, you will be free. So who's afraid? Just be in the fluidity, let things be and follow what is, without worrying about anything else. You will be where you have to be, you will have what you have to live, because everything contributes to freedom. Because everything contributes to no longer being a person, not a story, not good, not evil. And that is enough to change everything. You can't change anything on a stage, whatever it becomes, but you must play with a point of view of the one who is free what life offers you. Embrace without trying to do or deviate, and you will see for yourselves that this is enough to be free, that is to live again permanently, whatever your person says, whatever the virus says, which also does extreme good to the planet and also brings resilience, through suffering or through fear, to freedom, constantly. Even if you have to go through the difficulties of transportation, even if you have to go through this disease, it makes no difference, because you are beyond all that. Accept it, and see for yourself how you feel. The theater scene has to be played, but the way you play that scene is essential. Are you involved, are you observant, or do you really see that it has no substance, because it is just passing? You will never get through. So stop your whining, whether it is about your marriage, your children, your relationships, your transportation and this famous virus. Who is trying to protect themselves, if not the person? You are not that person, there is no one. There is freedom, whatever is played out on the theater stage. As long as you believe you are participating, as long as you believe you can change, you cannot be free. Freedom is without you, but passes through you, from the moment you stop nothing, from the moment you grasp nothing, from the moment you are in embrace, then again the truth reveals itself to you, through you. But you are the obstacle. You are not the consciousness. You are not memory, you are not history. You are pure love prior to any form, to any world, to any scenario. Accept it and you will see that the way you play the theater scene, which you cannot change anything, will be profoundly different and it will be lived with lightness, with laughter. You will laugh at yourselves, you will laugh at everyone, you will even laugh at the elders, at the archangels, at the stars, at the planets, at the devil. These are all fantasies, even if you are affected by them, for it is the person who is affected, not you. What are you identified with? You can't identify with yourself and be free. You can't be free. It's impossible. Not everything that happens is true. Whether it concerns love, sickness, suffering, death, even civilization. You have the striking example within this country of a certain number of deviations of the light, concerning the civilizational, societal aspects, if you can say so, of worship rendered to a total illusion, which is the Sunday. The sun is you. Another question. Brother, you have already answered it very largely, I will ask it anyway. This day at Mikupiku is particularly tense for some of us. Is it due to the energies in progress? There are indeed in these innumerable places that you have traveled, not awakening of memory, but put face to face. All that you hold, holds you. Whether it is tension as you say, at whatever level, it simply shows you what you hold dear, but what you hold dear holds you. There is obviously a history in these places, which is common to what has happened in other places, in other times. Whether it is in Egypt, whether it is in any trace of civilization, in Mesoamerica, Central America, and even in Europe. All this simply shows you the duplicity of all that is worship, submission, to any authority whatsoever. Whether it's human, solar, tied to an emperor or anything else. There are no gods, you are God. There is no one, accept it and you will live it. Do not ask yourself the question of resolving anything as tension, because tension itself sends you to suffering, to attachment, to belief. How do you want to be free in that? Then of course, what is called high place, lyric as well as cosmic, is directly linked to the myth of creation, to the confinement itself, because there is submission to an external authority, to what you call an emperor or king, to whoever or whatever. Consciousness is a disease, total, even if it has been necessary to go through a deployment, an expansion of consciousness, which is also an illusion, total, but which has allowed you to remember, not a history, not a memory, but who you are beyond being. So yes, when there's upheaval, when there's tension, it is an invitation to look within oneself at what resists, what is afraid, what is still building stories in the future rather than living in the present instant and crossing what is to be crossed. In short, it concerns problems of person, personality, relationships. Be the space, as Abba would say, this interdimensional spatial gate, and you will come out of any problem of the person, whatever the suffering, whatever the lack, which are only appearances. Don't believe me, experience it. But all that you live as tensions or as sufferings, sends you back to this formal failure to believe you a consciousness or a person. You are not yet disgusted by the game of memory, the very game of consciousness. And today more than ever, as I have had the opportunity to say for more than a year, there is love or there is suffering. There is no other alternative, there is no possible discussion with the truth. What is your objective? Independently of course of a pleasant journey, spectacular for some. But nothing prevents the person from living it, on the contrary. But don't be fooled. Silence. Brother, there are no more written questions. What about oral? Brother, let's take a look. Sister, I have one. Brother, yes. Sister, good evening BIDI. So today we went to Mikupika with several brothers and sisters, and at 11:11 exactly, while we were at the site of Mikupika, the sun appeared with a rainbow-colored circle. That's it. So, many of us have seen it, and what I wanted to know is if it is a cosmic sign. We will say, this is evidently a cosmic sign. Many years ago, the commander of the elders created a double solar halo at a specific time. The solar halo is a sign of reunion and resonance that has been offered to you by the opening of some to the truth. Everything is a sign, everything is a symbol, but everything is false and sends you back to the truth. The very play of duality, good, evil, tensions, suffering, today brings you indisputably to the freedom that you are. The parhalas, what you call snudogs or solar halos, beyond any scientific explanation, are indeed a sign of reliance and resonance, inviting you to always more truth, to always more disappearance and to always more embracing what is. I have a strong suspicion that it is the commander himself who has generated this in order to establish freedom and truth in you, by the slackening that it provokes, as well as the tensions that in the end led you to the same slackening as soon as you let go of the matter by letting be what is. Look, in all your reactions, in all that is to be lived, beyond the observer, who reacts and who lives, is it the person or not? Are you still a person or have you found that there's no one? That's where the difference lies. But it is indisputable, the signs abound in all possible ways, always referring you to a form of questioning which itself puts an end to the questions, by slackening, by acceptance and by crossing over. You are no form, you are no consciousness, because you have been all of them, the forms as well as the consciousnesses. You do not need to remember, you need to laugh at all of this. You think you possess a body, that body possesses you. You think you possess anything, that anything possesses you and obstructs the clear vision of who you are. Everything that happens is happy elements, unhappy elements. We were talking earlier about viruses. It is not a question of knowing or saying that it is good or bad. On the level of the person, it is evidently a disease. On the level of the conscience, it is a catastrophe. But on the level of freedom and truth, it is something quite different. Silence. Brother, we have a sister on my right who, with her eyes closed, has jerky, irrepressible movements of her head. What does she do? Brother, her eyes are closed and she shakes her head. Sister, she nods her head. What does she do then? Brother, well, I don't know. Let her shake it. Brother, okay. Are there any more questions? Sister, yes. Brother, ah. Sister, good evening BIDI, can you enlighten me and help me through these coughing fits that concern the throat chakra? Thank you. It concerns the person. There is a situation that is assumed but that obviously causes damage, and it concerns your intimate and family life, and you are perfectly aware of it. It has been accepted to be lived this way, and there is no possibility of healing through this, because you have seen for many years by yourself that it has always been there. This corresponds, as I have said, and I repeat, like other elders in other times, to a problem that I would call familial, quite simply, that you have assumed and that obviously leads to this cough, because there is no room for resolution, precisely, today, because you still believe you are a person. There are no more cats than cats on the moon. Accept this, it will depolarize your consciousness of history, even though you have seen it perfectly, and you will laugh at yourself with a big laugh. But as long as you want, especially today, to want to resolve, to want to solve, well, it will be impossible, and you know it, since you are living it. The important thing is simply to laugh at yourself, and, above all, not to forget that you are not what is living it, in any way. Here again, it simply means, and today it is the same for everyone, that you are still identified with a story or a character, or a memory. It is no longer time to want to explain, it is no longer time to want to solve, it is simply time to embrace, to cross over, and to find that truth that you are. This does not mean that you do not need to heal yourself, but do not use energy, consciousness or therapies to heal yourself. The only true healing is that of no longer being a person. Those who are living it can easily observe the total disappearance of any illness, even hereditary, without any difficulty. The difficulty is you. Everything that manifests itself to you, ultimately today, represents only an attachment to the idea of being a person, a memory or a story. It all comes down to that. You want to be free of yourselves, above all else. There is nothing to want to know since it is the lived experience itself that is the understanding, not the explanation. The explanation will always concern the person, always the soul, always the diagnosis. The one and only diagnosis is to believe you still believe someone or something. But the circumstances of life in these times remind you emphatically of the lack of positioning. The illumination of the intelligence of light is such that the more you oppose, the more you want to understand, the worse you will be, really as a person. For at that moment you are absolutely unavailable for the present instant, for time zero, for the double terrace of the heart, for peace and for joy. As long as you believe that joy or freedom depends on a solution of your character, your body or your affects, you cannot be free. You could talk about the heart, but you are in the mind. The one who lives it knows it, you can only recognize yourself. Hundreds of millions of people today live it, without asking questions, without knowing what a chakra, an energy, a vibration or a relationship problem is. Be honest with yourselves. Accept that there's nothing you can do about it and the crossing is happening, today more than ever. I have told you repeatedly and today, and you will see, you will have no other choice. The one who is free of himself, the one who lives at gate, whatever the state of his body, whatever the state of his emotions, can no longer be fooled or deceived by any element of the ephemeral. There is no effort to be made, as long as you believe you must make an effort, you resist, you oppose, unconsciously. You are still playing with consciousness. Why do you hear so much talk about the present instant and time zero? Because there is no other solution, it is the only truth, which will never pass. As long as you question yourself about attention, about a problem, you cannot be free. Of course, if it's a problem, go and get treatment, but as far as freedom is concerned, that has nothing to do with it. Understand the difference between solving what is bothering you, which is sometimes necessary and often necessary, but do not see any other meaning in it. Freedom and truth is a state beyond the being that is characterized by joy. This has been explained. Everything that is not joy is false, and concerns the person. This becomes more and more evident in all that you have to live, in all that you have to go through, and that, I remind you, yourself have written, precisely to wake up. So do not judge anything, neither you nor the other, because every judgment is also resistance and lack of freedom. Be spontaneous, be true, be present, and that is enough. Everything else is an obstacle, everything else is suffering, don't you see? And above all, be humble. You don't exist. What are you asking for? Isn't it wonderful enough for a person to live what you have lived, even as a person, in this country? And notice that it is precisely when you are busy with something pleasant, or unpleasant, that you are busy, Therefore, that you have the most possibilities of discovering that you are nothing of what you are busy with, that you are nothing of what makes you suffer or what makes you happy. It is called zero time, the heart of the heart, the junction of being and non-being, which inevitably leads to Shantinalaya. It has been explained for years. But history quickly catches up with you. As soon as there is something wrong, at that moment you become a person with a story again. You all see it. So get inside your heart, get inside it, and that's enough. Everything else is a chimera. It doesn't stop you from loving, it doesn't stop you from having a profession, it doesn't stop you from having a family, but be free from it. Silence. Brother, is there no one? Sister, we are told about the event. What will be your role? To put an end to this whole creation story. The chaos, again it has been explained countless times, and one would have to be blind not to see the progressive chaos of this earth, makes you happy. It has been explained, not as a satisfaction, but as a liberation. The event is here. You have spoken of a virus, you see the elements on earth, whether it is nuclear, whether it is what you call a war, all of these are just pretexts. You do not depend on any event. It has been said, you are the event. Whatever is happening on the screen of consciousness, it is just a screen made to attract you, to amaze you until you decide to go inside and see that everything is there. And to really see that you've designed everything, written everything, and lived everything. It's not a play on words, but how do you want to see it if you're playing your character game? It's impossible. You still think you can change, you still think you can observe, you still think you can talk, but in the end it's all about the person, always, endlessly. But no chance, it's the end of the dream or the nightmare. Silence. Silence. Brother, there is a testimony. Then we listen. Brother, I was simply, yesterday on the site of Pisak, overwhelmed by the beauty of the place. I think it was the altitude, the openness, the space, the whole. I was completely overwhelmed by the beauty of the place. It set you in the present time, and what did that do? Brother, joy and tears. This is the ultimate emotion, this ultimate emotion that cannot be explained and that needs to escape. Once it is experienced, the person will think he can grasp it or will see it fade away, but it leaves an indelible mark that only waits for the present instant or time zero to happen again. You recognized yourself, because there was a dumbfounding of consciousness by the beauty of the place as you say, which made you leave this character and his story, penetrate time zero, space, where everything is harmony. The vision, whatever it may be, is there also a form of astonishment and transcendence of consciousness at the same time. You can live time zero by painting, even by shopping or counting, as soon as you are absorbed. It is the same if you are affected by a virus, which kills you, it only kills illusion. But you can live it without virus, without event. As soon as you are absorbed in what I could call a contemplative aspect of something harmonious and beautiful, then you are free, even if it seems to have disappeared today. We spoke at length, at least not it but some of the sisters and elders and Abba, spoke extensively about beauty. Because beauty joins with freedom, it transcends the essence, it transcends what is observed and puts you in communion, in fusion with a space beyond what is seen and observed, that is freedom. Silence. Sister. Testimony in English. What? Brother. Yes, it is because our sisters spoke in English and so we are waiting for the translation. Sister. Our sister today, on the side of Makupika, saw many butterflies. She was also overwhelmed by the beauty of these butterflies. They reminded her of her parents who had now disappeared, as well as the ancestors, the Incas, whose souls were still present but needed to be released, liberated. And it happened, so she cried. And then she communicated this experience to her husband by telephone, who wrote a poem, which I can read in French. Incognito, transformed souls fly around Makupika. What once was, now is no more. Gentle reminder to move on. Flight of the source, fly free through eternity. Tears of joy and sadness run down my face. in honor and abandonment for everything that brought me to this place, testimony to the time that passes like the wind under the wings of the butterflies of Makupik. Thank you. Thank you. As I said before, as soon as you are seized by beauty, by majesty, by certainly the impressive side, then anything is possible. Because at that moment, you are receptive to what is, whether it is visual, even vibratory or energetic, you are subjugated in the good sense of the word, and there, beyond any formula and beyond even this poem, there is a recognition and a reconnection to the truth. It is much more pleasant for the person to be subjugated by a butterfly than by a virus, isn't it? But the result is the same. Freedom, truth. You are anterior to perception, you are anterior to the observer, but when the observer is fully immersed in the present instant, whatever its nature and color, then you are free. Of course, you are free. Because you are totally in the instant, you are totally in the observer, you are totally available and totally true. You have sisters and brothers, as they say, who live agape in a constant way, and others who access by small touches, with moments of return in the person more and more painful, in every sense of the word. And when you are disgusted with the pain, with the suffering, only love will remain. Silence. Sister, should life remind us that we are love? Absolutely, and in every possible and unimaginable way. Don't weigh anything, don't judge anything, only you, who wrote this, who leads you to realize that there has never been anyone and that everything is in it. And that really concretely, as Abba said, we are in each other. This is the concomitant step today with the lived experience that there has never been anyone. It is free joy. Thus is the intelligence of the light, which establishes, I would say, a form of synchronicity, where everything is done, even beyond all appearance or conviction, to bring you to the heart of the heart. Simply be there, simply present, simply accepting, and do not worry about anything else. And go about your occupations, and your obligations, and your leisure. That is the intelligence of light. It is in the acceptance of the dream that the end of the dream is found, and in no negotiation, in no explanation, but simply in spontaneity. It has been years since the elders, the stars, spoke to you of the path of childhood, of innocence. Your life, whatever you think about it, today brings you to that. And the heavier it may seem to you at times it may seem to you to be heavy, at times to come back into the person or to suffer, the closer you are to the truth. Just accept what is, we have told you in every way possible. This does not prevent, in a second or third stage, to react, of course. But if you react first, you can't cross over, you freeze things. In more modern terms I would say, be cool. Be available, let everything be, in your body, in your consciousness, and so you won't be fooled anymore. But if you begin to want to understand, to want to grasp, to want to explain, to want to connect with a history and a past, then you will suffer. Because you are life and intelligence. As Abba said, you are the way, the truth and the life. No matter what happens to you, no matter what happens, you are none of those things. Do not be fooled, be lucid. Silence. Brother, now I think there are no more questions. Then it will be time to thank you, for your questions, for your presence, and just remember this notion. If, whatever happens, you accept, you are free. Everything is a pretext, in which you have to live and which you are living, to finally bring you to this choice. Do I react, do I want to act, or do I embrace first? Check it and you will see. Then it is time for BIDI, I think, to greet you, to thank you, and I tell you to see you soon. Brothers and sisters, thank you BIDI, see you soon. Through Jean-Luc Young. Les Transformations. English Revised Translation. LMF.